I do quite a lot of lecturing in the Netherlands, which is a country which could be profoundly affected by global warming. There are many scientists who believe that even if the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere remains exactly as it is today, which is an impossibility, that we could see sea levels continue to rise for over 1,000 years. Now, although that could take place relatively slowly, what we need to understand is that you only need an increase in sea height of about half a metre to make quite a profound difference to countries like Bangladesh, which are, much of it, only a fraction above sea level, and indeed to the Netherlands, where a big chunk of the country is actually below sea level. Now, the Netherlands is interesting because one of the oldest parts of the Netherlands is the wonderful city of Amsterdam, with all of its beautiful canals. But what most people don't realise is that the level of that city has actually sunk, and the reason is simple, and it's linked to global warming. See, if we look at this pot, this flower pot here, unfortunately this poor plant is now sitting in hardly any peat at all. In fact, this pot has only half the amount of peat in it that it had when we first planted that plant. Now, why is that? The reason is that as the peat dries out, it oxidizes. Peat in its natural state is a perfectly preserved form of carbon which will remain in that kind of acidic bog for many, many, many decades, if not centuries. But when that bog dries out, then organisms can begin to grow and to use the oxygen that's available and some of the moisture, live on it, and convert the peat in the flower pot to carbon. Carbon dioxide is burnt, rather it's converted to carbon dioxide, which is burnt and released into the atmosphere. Now, that happened on a massive scale in the Netherlands. Once our ancestors started digging those drains in the middle of those peaty marshes, that huge wasteland that was impossible to live on and was very poor quality farmland, then what happened was that the peat started to dry out. As it dried out, it oxidized. As it oxidized, it just disappeared. So half a metre of that soil just went, and everything sank. So the whole area is below, even further below sea level than it was when that work was first done. Now, what does it mean for global warming? Well, it's an example of what can happen when you have cyclical systems beginning to feed in on each other and creating feedback mechanisms which produce surprising results. It's one of the reasons why we now believe that in some forests we may be seeing more carbon dioxide released than ever before. In fact, in some soils we may be seeing more carbon oxidized than is being put into that soil. In other words, we're going backwards. So you can begin to see that as you warm parts of the world, as peaty bogs, for instance, in Scotland, in my country, in the UK, start to dry out, you start to get further processes that accelerate the mechanism of carbon dioxide release, of oxidization of very old carbon. And these are the kinds of things that are worrying scientists and mean that a number of the predictions we have about global warming remain speculative and indeed quite controversial. But one thing is clear, that on current trends, China will become the major emitter of carbon dioxide in the world, even though the amount of carbon dioxide per citizen in China will remain vastly below countries like America. It's simply an issue of population size. Another thing that is clear is that there's an unstoppable momentum for carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere to go on increasing, whatever human beings do, for the next few decades. And that even if we act now, it will take quite some time to stabilize the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. But it's going to be very necessary to do this, and will be an enormous task for the whole of humankind.